You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I think there are two keys, and they're relatively simple. All right, let's start off with the first one for Syracuse in order to win. They have to win the turnover battle. Miami's offense is going to be really hard to stop. And I think no matter what, they're going to get their yards. In fact, I would be really surprised if Miami doesn't put up at least 400 total yards of offense. Given that they average 540 for the entire season, 400 isn't even a lot for them. They can do 400 in their sleep. So I'd be very surprised if they don't hit that mark on Saturday. So for Syracuse, what do you need to do? You need to turn the ball over, or force turnovers, I should say. You need to force turnovers because the less opportunities that Miami has to score is the less points they can actually score. It's that simple. I want you to think of it like this, okay? Let's say Syracuse wins the turnover battle by 2. That could be a 28-point swing. Think of it for a moment. You win it by 2, that's 28 points potentially swinging. Because you get 2 extra possessions, you can score 2 touchdowns. However, if you don't turn them over twice, then Miami could have those 2 possessions and score 2 touchdowns. It's a 28-point swing. And yeah, sure, in any football game, it's important to win the turnover battle. But when you're going up against an explosive offense like Miami, you need to maximize the amount of possessions that you have. And the only way to do that is to win the turnover battle. It's that simple. So that's the number one key. You got to win the turnover battle. They got to find a way to do it. Number 2, touchdowns, touchdowns, touchdowns. That's right. Folks, field goals are not an option. Nope, I'm sorry. Unless it is end of half, like we saw against UConn, where they had to settle for that 51-yarder. There was no time on the clock. That I get. But unless it's an end of half, end of game, potentially, or it is 4th and a mile long, like it's 4th and 15 or whatever, and you have to settle for the field goal, those are the only exceptions. Other than that, no field goals. No thank you. Because you're not going to win this game kicking field goals. I've given you guys the numbers of Miami's offense. I'm sorry, but if Syracuse gets into the red zone and it's 4th and 5, you got to go for it. You got to be ultra, ultra aggressive. Think about what UConn did to Syracuse on Saturday. Think about it for a second. They went for it in their own territory on a 4th and 1 in the second quarter, down 7 points. You know why they did that? They were rewarded. They got a 71-yard touchdown from that, and we talked about that on the podcast and the postgame. But why did they go for it? Because UConn knew. UConn knew that they could not stop the Syracuse offense. They had no choice. So what I'm saying for Syracuse is touchdowns, touchdowns, touchdowns. Field goals are not an option. If you have a chance to go for it instead of punting, do it. If it's 4th and 1 at your own 30, I don't care if it's early in the game. I'm fine with rolling the dice. I'm fine with it. Because Miami's going to get their yards. They're going to get their points. And we'll talk about on Friday how many points I think Syracuse needs to score in order to win this game. But the bottom line is this: touchdowns, touchdowns, touchdowns. There is no room for being conservative. Fran Brown, this is your chance to be ultra aggressive and have me not criticize you. How about that? Because normally I'm very conservative when it comes to playing football. I would rather you take the points. I would rather you punt if it's early in the game. Not against Miami. Sometimes the situation and the team changes a strategy, and that's the case with a team like the Miami Hurricanes. Plus, let's say Syracuse does settle for field goals. Like they decide not to be super duper aggressive. Well, it's not like the Orange have an All-American kicker. They don't. I mean, Jackson Kennedy, he hit all of his tries against Cal, which was nice. And then last week against UConn, what do you go, 1 for 3? Missed a 36-yarder. It's not like you have an All-American there, so you can't necessarily rely on, even if you settle for the points, you might not get the points. That's number one. And like I just said on number 2, Miami's offense is going to move the ball anyway. Make them settle for field goals. Syracuse needs to score touchdowns.